Could Derek Lunsford become the GOAT of bodybuilding? We discuss it all in a new episode of What's the Word? What's the word? What's up, desktoppers? Xavier Wills here for Desktop Bodybuilding, and today I'm joined by Jimmy Sadek, Stanimal Longeaux, and Michael Galley, and we are discussing the word is that Derek Lunsford could be or become the GOAT of bodybuilding. Jimmy, what do you think? Because obviously Derek Lunsford is a young guy winning his first Mr. Olympia, especially compared to the rest of the lineup. He's come in this year, placed second last year. He technically has 2 Olympia titles, so depending if you count the 212 as, well, it's an Olympia title, but it's not a Mr. Olympia. Do you think with his 212 title, he could become the GOAT of bodybuilding, win 8 Open Olympias and hold that 212 title as well? Or do you think that there's too many guys up there?
How old is he?
I believe he's in his late 20s. I was actually going to look that up while you were talking, but I'll look that up while we're talking.
He's got a good shot because like he's all
30.
he really needs to do is improve 10 to 15% each year, and like from the front he can improve quite a great deal. He could keep his nose ahead of the pack, and they seem to really like him. So I'd say
yeah. And the thing about Derek Lunsford, I'll share his physique while we're talking about him as well, is being 30 years of age. That's young. I mean, really, like some guys like Ronnie Coleman, he wasn't winning his first Olympias until he was into his, I believe, mid-30s at least. So, Mick, what do you think about the trajectory of Derek Lunsford? And I suppose, do you think he can become the most winning Mr. Olympia, or do you think it's going to sort of switch hands? Because the last 6 or so years, I think we've had 5 different champions or something like that. So it's been a different trend lately.
It's so early to predict something like that. Like I honestly can see this switching hands. He might win 1 or 2 or something. Like Hardy, Nick, Samson, those guys are so good. Like I can't help but think one of them, even Andrew Jack, if he reaches his full potential, would be right up there. No. I don't think he could probably go to 8, but I mean, it's a tough one to ask. I just think those other guys I mentioned, they're all in with a very realistic shot of taking the title.
Yeah. Stan, what do you think? Because obviously Derek Lunsford, he has clean lines. There's no sign of him blowing out his physique in any way. And he's obviously got age on his side and a pretty good team as well in Honey Rambod and that whole support system. Do you see a chance of that happening, or do you think it will happen?
No, I definitely see a chance of it happening because, Hadi says, oh, next year he's going to have a more mature chest. And what happens next year, he's got a more mature chest. Like they were saying, everybody was pointing out his legs being weak, and now they're extremely massive, even though they still look, they could be bigger because he's so wide on top that he can still add some size on those. So he's definitely got still room to improve, and he seems to improve very fast. He can really get more details through his midsection and chest, and even through his arms and shoulders. But it seems like Hani knows exactly what to do, and Derek executes perfectly, and it shows. Every year he brings some, more and better details to his physique. So if he can have a dynasty and win for years to come, absolutely. After that, do I think it's going to happen? I hope not. I think there's so much. It's so competitive nowadays, and we saw it's been changing hands the last few years. And you just mentioned all these guys: Andrew, Samson, Nick, Hadi, who can get it back. It's definitely a fight for it. It's not an easy grab for anyone. But Derek definitely knows what he's up against, and he's got the mindset to do it. But time will tell if he's able to really bring those details in the front shots.
Yeah, he's definitely got the structure to do it. There's no doubt about that. And as you mentioned, really his one weak point is bringing the detail from the front. Every other area of his physique to me seems pretty on point, which is good for him. It's just whether that someone will come in with detail from every area, like maybe a Nick Walker, like maybe some of these other guys that could throw that off. But obviously that's, going to be very interesting. I'm going to ask you guys in a minute as well, how many Olympia titles, if you had to guess, put your life on it, Derek Lunsford will win by the end of his career. But being obviously only 30 years of age, he turned 30 this year as well. So he is super young. So if he was to win 8, I believe he'd win his 8th at 37 years of age if he obviously won them consecutively. But it is a lot to put on someone, because everyone, when Phil Heath won the Olympia, everyone said Phil's going to win 10 and be the greatest Mr. Olympia of all time, because that first Olympia victory was convincing. So to say Derek Lunsford in a close Mr. Olympia is going to win 8 or something like that, I think Derek Lunsford is the only true possibility of someone having a run at the Mr. Olympia, winning multiple titles, and he has to go into next year being the favorite again. So if he wins it next year, it's 2, and then it starts to look like 3. And we all saw how it sort of went with all these other guys that won multiple Olympias as well. Mick, what do you think it will take? Who do you think is the most likely to take it back off Derek? Do you think it's like a Hardy, a Sampson maybe coming in with another year of refinement, Nick Walker coming in next year? Like, who do you think is the most likely?
Everyone you've just mentioned has got a great. I mean, we haven't seen Nick on that stage, obviously pulling out, and he made huge improvements. So we don't know what he looked like standing next to Hardy and Derek. But I think it's a tight. I mean, Sampson, if he takes a year off, he's going to make huge improvements too. Those 3, oh man, that's a hard one to even answer, because there's so many variables to it.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you said, Jimmy, because it's like, if he can just get people, because there's no clear Phil Heath at the moment. There's no, guy that you're like, well, he's a 90% chance to win it. It's more like this guy has a 40% chance, this guy has a 30% chance, this guy has a 30% chance, and it sort of goes that sort of way at the moment. But yeah, it's just if he can keep just winning Olympia titles. And I think that was the thing, like, Stan, I don't know how you feel about it, but when Phil was winning the Olympia, it seemed like, his physique wasn't progressing forward. It was sort of slowly, I'd say, progressing backwards, especially in the last half of his Olympia wins, in some regards, at least anyway. I mean, Derek needs to keep progressing forward, so it's a little bit different to what Phil Heath's reign would have been if Derek's able to do it. Is there anyone else out there that was on the Olympia stage this year or otherwise that can potentially go on a run of Mr. Olympias, or is Derek really the only one there?
Well, okay, sorry, no, go Stan.
No, but I think he's one of the youngest guys outside of like Nick right now, that because Sampson and Andrew are both like guys who could take it, but they don't have that many years in front of them. They're more like in late 30s. Then the only one who's like closer to Derek's age would be Nick. So I see him as the most obvious contender.
Yeah, good point. Jimmy, do you think there's anyone else out there?
Well, look, in the next 2 to 3 years, there's still Hardy, Sampson, and Andrew that will challenge quite hard, but then they're over 40. Nick's Derek's age, and then but coming up, like the guys have got to make a lot of ground up. Like from what everyone's saying, Hunter looks completely different in real life than on the screen. So like he's a possible one, I guess. And I'm assuming he's closer to Derek and Nick's age than the other fellas.
What do you think about Carlos Thomas? Not yet, obviously, but in the future.
Doesn't he have that health condition?
Yeah, he does. He's got ulcerative colitis, which is no joke.
Well, he's not going to get dry enough.
Yeah. I think in reality, you've really got to have that under control, because I knew someone with that and they got it under control. And obviously it thrives when you're stressed out too, because you develop more ulcers. So obviously a prep is not conducive to that illness. So it's a tough one, because the person I know that once they got it under control, they said, oh yeah, I dropped like 6 kilos in water weight that I was just holding because of the stress on their body. So I sometimes I wonder if that affects Carlos Thomas, because he's the only one I can see going and winning 8 Olympias if he can, really bring it in tight and get that all under control. So that's tough. Mick, is there anyone out there that you can see? Sorry, you go,
Can you see Antonio creeping up like a Dexter did over the next couple of years?
We actually just mentioned this on Bodybuilding University, and Stan, we sort of spoke about the structure of Tonio, and it just depends, because everyone said about Phil Heath saying that, hasn't got wide enough shoulders to win the Olympia. His clavicles are too narrow, but he went and won 7. Sorry. So Stan, we sort of spoke about that a little bit before. Refresh me of your opinion on that.
About Tonio?
Yeah, about Tonio and his structure, and could he push up to the top of the Olympia and be right up there?
I mean, personally, I had him a lot higher than he was. I would have been fight with Brandon and Andrew. And I think next to Brandon, he would have been very interesting and very well compared. Arguably pushing Brandon even, I think. So, I mean, Antonio is probably the guy who impressed me the most on that stage, like watching the show in person. He was very complete, lots of detail, extremely freaky, but still aesthetic. Back shots are nuts. And I would have liked to see him compared a little higher. I think, again, he would have compared much better next to the guys I mentioned versus Criso and Regan. But that was a good showing for him. And I think he got noticed, and I think he's going to get higher from here. Then how high, we'll see.
Yeah. Mick, what do you think? We'll get back to Derek in a second, and I'll get how many Olympias you think he'll actually win. But what do you think about Tonio? Is he a guy that can push up there, do you think, and potentially win Olympia titles?
I don't know if he could win, but he's certainly got a great look to his physique. He's got that beautiful round muscle bellies, comes in excellent condition. I agree with Stan. I would have loved to see him get some better comparisons up the top, because, again, it's hard to see on the pay-per-view. Stan was obviously pretty close up the front, but I could have definitely seen him taking away quite a few shots from Brandon and stuff like that. Mainly because of his, I guess, Stan, mainly because of his condition. Yeah, his condition was
of course,
wasn't it?
Yeah, I think his conditioning definitely improved from earlier in the year, absolutely. But we'll get back to the topic. And Derek Lunsford, Jimmy, how many Olympias do you think Derek Lunsford will end his career with?
I reckon between 4 and 6. I'll say 5.
5 Olympias. So that'd be a nice career. Galley?
It's a hard one. Do you know what? I'm going to say another 2, because I think it's going to swap quite a bit over the next 6 to 8 years.
Fair. Stan, how many do you think Derek will end his career with?
I'll say 5.
5. All right. I'm going to say, based on his age and the fact that there are some guys like Samson, like he has a fresh physique and will probably go well into his 40s, but he'll eventually, there'll be some stage where he will drop off, and Derek will be, 8 years or so younger. And then you've got guys obviously like Brandon that won't be there anymore, and Hardy's a little bit older. I think 5 or 6 years on, at least 6 years on Derek. So I'm going to say he's going to win 6. So, but I don't think it'll be. I don't think it'll be 6 consecutive. I think it'll be like 6 over 8 years. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Let us know in the comments how many Olympia titles you think Derek will win, and do you think he can become the most winning Mr. Olympia of all time by winning 8 titles and then having a 212 title as well? Outside of, I think, Iris Kyle, who maybe has 10 or something like that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me once again for another episode of What's the Word. Follow all these guys on social media: Jimmy Sadek, Stanimal, Stan Longeaux, and Michael Galley. And we'll let Jimmy get back to watching his programs there in the background. But anyway, guys, that's it for us. For all of us here at Bodybuilding University at Desktop Bodybuilding, we are